Hello, and thanks for tuning in to another episode of Pop Culture English. Today, we will be discussing a classic piece of English literature that has influenced pop culture for more than a century. Chances are, though, that you have never read it. Vampires. Of course, you've heard of them. They're the monsters that sleep in coffins during the day, come out at night, and suck your blood. They can turn into bats, can't stay in the sun, and cannot stand the smell of garlic. Vampires have become a staple of the modern horror genre. The word staple can mean a lot of things, but here it refers to something that has become an important defining aspect of a genre. For example, because space travel comes up in so much of science fiction, we can say that space travel is a staple of science fiction. But where did vampires come from? Well, vampires have been a part of folklore for a very long time. Folklore refers to the traditional beliefs, myths, and tales passed down from generation to generation of a culture. So, when we talk about Japanese folklore, for example, we refer to the various myths and stories passed down through Japanese culture. Anyways, even though vampires had been a part of Eastern European folklore for many centuries, they only became popular in the late 1800s. And all that was due to a novel called Dracula. Dracula, written by the English-Irish author Bram Stoker, basically made vampire stories popular. After all, the villain of the novel, who is, as you can guess, a vampire named Dracula, has become a common household name. Many of the tropes we associate with vampires, such as their hatred of garlic, also come from this novel. A trope is basically a trait that is consistently associated with a certain type of character or genre. For example, once upon a time is a common trope in fairy tales. Yet, not all is the same. Although the novel created many of the tropes we now associate with vampires, there are also some important differences. To unpack them, let's first discuss what the novel is about. Dracula is a special type of novel called an epistolary novel. Many of the words in English come from Latin, the language ancient Romans used to speak. This case is no different. The word epistolary comes from the Latin word epistola, which means letter. Hence, an epistolary novel is a type of novel that tells its story through a series of letters. Dracula does not provide a single continuous story or narrative. Instead, it is split up into many different letters, diary entries, audio recordings, and newspaper articles. Each letter or entry is told from the perspective or viewpoint of one single character. This makes the storytelling of Dracula very effective, since it provides a sense of realism. In other words, it makes a story that is very unrealistic feel like it is happening in the reality we live in. Plus, sometimes the characters writing the entries do not understand what is going around them, while the readers do. This makes for some dreadfully delightful suspense. The novel opens with the diary entries of an Englishman called Jonathan Harker. Harker is in Romania, a country in Eastern Europe, because his company has asked him to help a Romanian count buy some property in London. The count is, of course, Count Dracula. In the beginning, the count acts very politely, yet strangely. He is never seen during the day. Jonathan never sees him eat, and can't see his reflection in the mirror. Slowly, Jonathan discovers Dracula's true identity as a vampire and his master plan: to move to London, where there are many more people he can suck the blood of. Jonathan narrowly escapes Dracula's castle, and the rest of the novel follows the lives of several men and women as they try to stop Dracula's invasion. That is actually the first key difference between the novel's depiction of Dracula and the way we imagine vampires today. Nowadays, vampires are usually associated with castles and medieval Europe. The medieval times, by the way, was a period of European history that lasted from around the 5th century to the 15th century. It was the time period we associate with castles and with knights in shining armor. Yet, even though we associate vampires with the medieval times, Dracula, the novel, was actually set in early modern England, specifically in the late 1800s. Dracula, the vampire, exists in a world with steam trains, guns, and telegrams. Plus, although he is affected by some of the items we associate with vampires, such as garlic, he is utterly unaffected by others. For example, Dracula can walk in the sun without getting hurt. Even though he is hundreds of years old, the Dracula in the novel knows a lot about modern technology. He reads the latest English travel books and is very good at doing business. Far from a relic or an artifact of the past, the Dracula we see in the novel is modern and up to date. We can say that he is a man of his times. In conclusion, do I recommend that you read Dracula? Probably not. The novel is over 400 pages long and written in old-fashioned English, so it can be quite difficult to read, even for a native English speaker. However, I do recommend you to have a look into the vampire genre. Watch a movie or two, perhaps. You might be surprised at how popular the genre is. As always, the transcript to this podcast is in the description below. And if you'd like me to cover a specific book, TV show, movie, or video game in a future episode, just let me know. Until next time.